Were you a kid in the 1960s? Then you remember the thrill when toys could burn, bruise, or even explode. And nobody thought twice. Safety manuals, please? We had clackers, cannonballs, and radioactive science kits, and we loved every second. These weren't just toys, they were tiny tests of bravery. Today, most of them are banned for good. But back then, they defined childhood. So buckle in, because we're about to revisit 25 of the most dangerous toys we played with and somehow survived. Creepy crawlers were pure chaos in a box. The Thing Maker gave us metal molds, sizzling hot plates, and plastic goop that bubbled like lava. We'd pour it in, watch it melt, and hope we didn't scorch a finger. The kitchen smelled like burning rubber, but we were proud of those bugs. They stuck to windows, walls, even our siblings. And the hotter the mold, the cooler the critter. Sure, we got burned, but it was worth it just to see someone scream when we snuck one under the couch cushion. Clackers were loud, wild, and absolutely everywhere. 2 acrylic balls on a string, swing them just right, and they'd collide with a sharp, rhythmic smack. But miss the timing? You'd end up with bruised knuckles or a welt on your wrist. They cracked, shattered, sometimes even flew off like mini missiles. Still, the playground was full of that unmistakable, echoing like a dare. We knew the risks, and we kept playing anyway. Who else had a pair that broke mid-swing and nearly took out a cousin? Lawn darts, Jarts as we called them, came with metal tips sharp enough to stick in dirt or skin. We'd launch them straight up, barefoot and laughing, barely watching where they'd fall. No rules, no boundaries. Just kids hurling spears while parents flipped burgers nearby. The clang when one hit a lawn chair? Everyone froze, then raced to grab it next. Who remembers that one uncle who took a dart to the shin and never even dropped his spatula? Pogo sticks bucked like wild broncos, and we tried to ride them anyway. One bounce too far, and you'd crash sideways into the bushes, or worse, the driveway. But we kept at it, counting each jump like it meant something. The springs squeaked, the grips twisted, and somehow we believed we'd master it. Skinned knees were badges of honor. Who else swore they hit 10 bounces, only to wipe out in front of the whole neighborhood? Chemistry sets in the 60s didn't come with warnings. They came with real glass tubes, open flames, and mysterious powders just begging to be mixed. The moment you lit that little burner, the smell hit you, sharp, chemical, and a little exciting. We weren't following instructions, we were chasing reactions. Burn marks on the counter? Smoke curling to the ceiling? That just meant you were doing it right. Who remembers stirring something harmless until it fizzed over and everyone bolted? Moon shoes looked ridiculous, like mini trampolines as strapped to your sneakers. They promised lunar fun, but mostly delivered twisted ankles and bruised knees. We'd bounce down the driveway with zero control, wobbling like astronauts on their first spacewalk. The metal frames clanked with every step, echoing through the neighborhood. But we didn't care. We were on the moon. Who else remembers leaping off a porch step and landing flat on the lawn, arms spread like a crash-landed space capsule? The Atomic Energy Lab kit came with real uranium, sealed in a tiny vial that glowed under the lamp. The Gilbert U-238 version even included a Geiger counter, so you could measure radiation like a real scientist. Or think you were. We didn't just mix colors, we tested danger. The whole kitchen became a lab, and every click from that counter felt like proof of genius. Who remembers proudly showing it off? Until your mom read the label and nearly had a meltdown? Metal-tipped arrows weren't toys pretending to be real. They were real. The tips could pierce cardboard, dent wood, even stick into the side of a shed. We'd draw the string back like Robin Hood and let it fly, aiming for boxes, but hitting fences, trash cans, or sometimes nothing at all. Near misses were expected. That satisfying thunk when one hit the mark? Pure glory. Who else remembers running around barefoot looking for arrows while your dad yelled about the neighbor's tomatoes? The Easy Bake Oven wasn't just a toy, it was your first taste of independence. You'd crack open that pink plastic door, slide in a tray of batter, and let the magic light bulb do its work. No timers, no supervision, just tiny cakes the size of a silver dollar, and the thrill of doing it yourself. The metal inside got hot enough to sting, but we kept checking anyway. Who remembers frosting a lopsided cake with burnt fingers and feeling like a five-star chef? The vacuum form always smelled like burnt plastic and danger. We'd plug it in on the card table, watch that sheet curl over the mold, and press down fast before it cooled. A few seconds later, boom! You had a tiny race car, still soft and steaming. We made everything from toy jets to lumpy keychains, proud like little inventors. The fumes were nasty, and yeah, we burned our fingers more than once. But that smell? Even now, it takes me straight back to being 8 years old. The slip and slide turned every backyard into a racetrack of chaos. We'd unroll that shiny plastic, blast the hose, and run barefoot with reckless speed. If you hit it just right, you flew. But if you missed, you'd slam into dry grass or dirt with a painful thud. Still, we kept going, soaked and bruised, screaming with laughter. The splash, the scrape, the burn from a belly flop gone wrong. It was wild, it was summer, and I wouldn't trade that feeling for anything. The Super Ball looked harmless, until it wasn't. Made from some kind of space-age rubber, this little thing could bounce sky-high and ricochet off every wall in the house. You'd slam it down on the kitchen floor and watch it zip past lamps, dogs, and siblings in a blur. Half the fun was chasing it. The other half was ducking. We broke more than a few picture frames with it, but nobody cared. That unpredictable bounce was what made it magic. Dangerous, yes, but pure 60s fun. The Whammo Air Blaster didn't shoot darts or foam. It blasted pure air. You'd pull the trigger and a sudden burst of wind would knock over cups from across the room. We aimed it at faces, pets, even birthday candles, laughing every time someone flinched. It looked harmless, but up close, that invisible blast could sting. Every living room turned into a battlefield of startled reactions and surprise attacks. For something that shot nothing at all, it sure caused a lot of chaos and a whole lot of fun. The bop bag was simple, just an inflatable punching bag with a weighted bottom. You'd hit it and it'd pop right back up, grinning like it enjoyed the abuse. We'd spend hours swinging at that thing, trying to knock it over, but it always bounced back for more. Sometimes, though, it came back a little too fast, and more than one kid took a surprise hit to the face. Still, it soaked up every punch without a complaint. For restless 60s kids, it was the perfect way to burn energy and stir up a little chaos. The hippity hop ball was impossible to ignore. A giant rubber ball with a handle on top, just begging to be bounced on. We'd grip that handle tight and hop through the house or across the yard like maniacs, laughing all the way. It wasn't the safest ride. Plenty of kids went flying sideways or crashed into furniture, but we got right back on. By the end of the day, our legs were sore, our knees scraped, and the ball half deflated. But for a few glorious hours, it felt like flying, one bounce at a time. The water wiggle looked harmless, just a hose attachment with a plastic head that flailed wildly when the water was turned on. But once it came to life, that thing was chaos. It whipped through the yard like a possessed snake, spraying water in every direction. We'd chase it, dodge it, and sometimes get smacked right in the face. If it wrapped around your legs, good luck escaping without a fall. Still, we couldn't get enough of it. On a hot summer day, the water wiggle turned the backyard into a splash zone of pure, unpredictable fun. Super elastic bubble plastic wasn't your average bubble mix. It came in a little tube, smelled like glue, and let you blow shiny plastic bubbles that lasted forever. We'd squeeze a blob onto the end of a straw, blow gently and watch in awe as giant, rainbow-colored bubbles took shape. But if you inhaled too fast, That chemical smell would hit you like a truck. Some kids got dizzy, but we didn't care. We were bubble artists, chemists, inventors. Looking back, it probably wasn't the safest toy, but it sure made us feel like we were creating magic. Swing Wing was one of the silliest looking toys of the 60s and one of the most unforgettable. You'd strap the plastic band to your head, give it a jerk, and try to keep that spinning weight twirling with just neck movements. It looked hilarious and felt even funnier. Kids would wobble and stagger like they'd spun in circles, sometimes crashing into lawn chairs or each other. It wasn't long before the dizziness kicked in, but we kept going because the fun wasn't in winning. It was in looking ridiculous together. The Johnny Reb cannon made every backyard feel like a battlefield. This toy looked like a real Civil War cannon and could actually fire small plastic cannonballs. We'd line it up on the lawn, crouch behind bushes, and pretend we were soldiers in some grand standoff. When you pulled the cord, boom! That thing let out a satisfying pop and launched a ball across the yard. If it hit a flower pot or a sibling, well, that was part of the thrill. It was risky, loud, and totally unforgettable. The Fanner 50 cap gun made every kid feel like a Wild West sheriff. It wasn't just a toy. It fired paper caps that gave off a real pop, a puff of smoke, and that unmistakable smell of gunpowder. You'd slap on a cowboy hat, draw your six-shooter, and challenge your friends to backyard duels at high noon. The noise was loud, and if you touched a spent cap, it could sting your fingers, but none of that stopped us. The thrill was in the bang, the smoke, and feeling like a cowboy for a day. The belt-buckle Derringer was the sneakiest toy in a cowboy's arsenal. At first glance, it looked like any old belt buckle, but press the hidden trigger and it would fire a small plastic bullet straight from your waist. Kids loved the surprise factor, showing off their secret weapon in backyard standoffs. Sure, it didn't fire far, but if you aimed too high or too close, it could leave a sting. Still, the fun was in the drama, the quick draw, and that moment when your friends didn't see it coming. The Jolly Chimp wasn't dangerous in the traditional sense, but it sure startled more than a few of us. You'd wind it up, and suddenly those cymbals would clash, its eyes would bulge, and that frozen grin would stare straight through you. It was loud, jerky, and just unsettling enough to make younger kids cry. Still, something about it kept us watching. Maybe it was the anticipation, or the thrill of not knowing exactly when it would spring to life. One thing's for sure, once it started clanging, no one could look away. Sky dancers looked like pure magic. You'd pull the string, and suddenly these elegant dolls would twirl into the sky, their wings spinning like petals in the wind. For a few seconds, it felt like watching a fairy take flight. But that beauty came with a catch. Those wings could veer off course fast. More than one of us took a wing to the face or watched a dancer vanish into a tree forever. Still, the thrill of the launch kept us coming back. You never quite knew where it would land, and that made it unforgettable. The Magic 8 Ball didn't pop, spin, or fly, but it still held a strange kind of power. You'd shake it, stare into that murky window, and wait for the floating answer to appear. Yes, no, ask again later. It felt like the toy knew something we didn't. In dark bedrooms or sleepovers, we'd whisper questions, half joking, but also kind of serious. And if it ever cracked open, that inky liquid was a mess. Still, there was something irresistible about leaving your fate to a little black ball filled with mystery. Mr. Machine was like a walking science experiment, with clear plastic casing, exposed gears, and a wind-up key in the back. You could see every part move as he marched across the floor, clanking, clicking, almost dancing. But those little metal parts had a habit of pinching fingers if you got too curious. Still, that was half the fun. Taking him apart, putting him back together, trying to figure out how it all worked. For many of us, it was our first glimpse into the magic of machines, and a reminder that curiosity sometimes came with a sting. They might have been risky, they might have been banned, but to us, they were unforgettable. These weren't just toys, they were pieces of our childhood. If even one of them brought back a smile or a scar, share your memory in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this ride through the past, give us a like, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more coming, and it only gets better from here.